my name is Virgie Tovar, and I'm the author of You Have the Right to Remain Fat.
No one has to be healthy.
A cake-related fatphobic incident, or CRFI, is that moment when it's time to eat delicious cake and it's interrupted by a moralizing impulse.
Well, guys, we all know the city of San Francisco has a ton of problems, from homelessness to drug abuse to crime, but instead of tackling those problems, the city of San Francisco is moving in a different direction. Instead, they want to tackle the fat positivity and body acceptance movement, and they've done so by hiring, and I have to read this, a self-proclaimed anti-weight-based discrimination expert by the name Virgie Tovar, who's telling you you have a right to remain fat. I'm being serious.
You have the right to remain fat.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Guys, before we get into today's video, please like and subscribe. Yes, today we're going to be talking about the new weight stigma czar in San Francisco by the name of Virgie Tovar. Now, according to this article out of the Daily Mail, San Francisco has hired this individual with taxpayer money. Your tax dollars are funding this. It says the San Francisco Department of Public Health has hired a consultant on weight stigma and weight neutrality, despite the city being in the midst of a battle against rampant homelessness, open-air drug use, and violent crime. It says here that Virgie Tovar is a self-described anti-weight-based discrimination expert, and she describes herself as a prominent advocate for fat positivity and body acceptance. She announced her appointment on Instagram, and she called it an absolute dream come true. She goes on to say that she believes weight neutrality will be the future of public health. And it's interesting that she's using the phrase weight neutrality. We use the phrase neutrality quite often on this channel, specifically in regards to race and gender. Race neutrality and gender neutrality are things that I highly advocate for to a certain extent. When it comes to jobs, scholarships, facets of our lives where race does not apply, I argue that we should go about them in a race-neutral manner. The very same can be said for gender in a lot of different aspects, but not all of them. There are certainly instances where I would look at gender and say this is most definitely a factor that needs to be talked about and applied when analyzing a specific situation. Think of men and women's sports, for example. There's no such thing as gender neutrality when it comes to that. But weight-based neutrality? I don't think we're there yet, and for good reason. But with that being said, let's hear some statements and arguments from Virgie Tovar to see exactly what she's going to be bringing to this position of weight neutrality at the city of San Francisco.
Where do you see the intersection, really? What is your definition of health?
Yeah, that's really complicated, right? I think I want to talk about that question, but I want to start by saying that, you know, no one has to be healthy. No, right? Like, I mean, it's like, no, like there is no governing body that's like out there putting, you know what I mean? It's like no one owes anybody that in either the traditional sense of the word or any other more innovative or, you know, more politicized, maybe even version of that word. So I think it's important to say like, and I want to back up and bring in intersectionality and say like, right, like look at the disabled community, right? Like I think people with disabilities have and activists within that space have consistently been saying like, I'm never going to be your notion of healthy. That doesn't mean I don't get to be a full human. You get to treat me some kind of way, right? And so I think that I love taking that principle within disability rights to fat activism and to understandings of fatness. So I want to start there, right? Like no matter what size you are, you don't owe anybody else your health. But I mean, for me, right, like in an ideal world where in an ideal world, there wouldn't be health-based gatekeeping at all.
The amount of entitlement in this video is just absolutely insane. There are so many points to unpack here, but first of all, let's address the fact that she's compared her fatness, which for many people is largely a choice. Let's make that clear. And you've compared it to somebody who struggles with a disability, something that in many cases they cannot do anything about. That is wild to me. But I guess that's what she refers to as intersectionality. If I was a disabled person listening to that, my eyebrows would be up. I'd have some words for this young woman. Let's address her second major point, that you don't owe it to anybody to be healthy, which I guess people have different philosophies on that. Some people think they have a duty, not only to themselves, but to their families, their societies, and their civilization. And if you express that you have a duty to your community, your civilization, your family, yourself, then part of that duty, in my opinion, would be to be healthy. For we know that healthy people bring about the best results results, not only for their lives, but the lives around them. The illness that you experience in struggling with something like fatness or a food addiction, not to say that that's what Virgie Tovar is experiencing, actually does go on to have ramifications for those around you. And if that philosophy is not yet resonating with you, let me give you a few examples of how living in a larger body, specifically in instances where people are making choices leading to living in that larger body, affects not only themselves, but the people around them. Health insurance and our medical system. If you are living in a fat body, you are far more likely to require medical assistance. And in many places, including here, a lot of us are funding these individuals using the medical system. So in theory, their choice to be in a fat body, and more importantly than that, continue to commit the actions that lead to being in a bigger body, are impacting you and yours. If you don't care about that, fine. There's a lot of actions that we're all doing on any given day that are impacting those around us in a negative fashion, particularly when it comes to taxpayer funding. Let's think about the family unit or the community. When you're living in a larger body and say you have children, what happens when you're not able to carry through with certain activities for those children? What happens if there's a fire in your house, God forbid, and you have to take care of your children, run up 2 sets of stairs in order to grab them and save them, and you are living in a body that is incapable of doing that in a healthy manner? Not to mention the impact of being in an unhealthy body and how that affects your mental health. We all know we're in a society that is struggling through a deep-set mental health crisis right now, and it's hard to believe that these things don't bleed over into one another. But I'll leave you with those examples. I could go on and give you more, but you get what I'm saying. And it's one thing to notice those impacts and disregard them and say, I'm making this choice anyway, and sort of own up to it and take accountability. It's another to completely deny that these things are having impacts on other people, which is what she's doing by arguing for weight neutrality. And still she may hear all of that and say, I think you don't owe it to anybody to be healthy. And there would be strong arguments for the fact that you don't owe anything to anybody. But I think a large part of the human experience is trying to understand your responsibility and duty despite the fact that you don't owe anybody anything. But let's hear more from Ms. Tovar.
CRFI. If you're like many women, you've been to a birthday party or a small office gathering, an event that's meant to bring people together. There's swinging tunes, some adult beverages, and good convo. And then it comes time to cut the cake, and someone decides to ruin everything.
Oh my God, that slice is huge. That slice is bigger than Beyonce's paycheck. Can you cut me half of that?
A cake-related fatphobic incident, or CRFI, is that moment when it's time to eat delicious cake and it's interrupted by a moralizing impulse. Inevitably, there's always someone at the party who has to declare publicly that their slice is too large, and that the person who's cutting the cake, almost invariably a woman, must do some disproportionate amount of labor in order to accommodate their need to feel superior. Let's take a look.
Can you do a little bit, just like,
can you like scrape all the frosting off and cut it in half and give me 2 forks, because I'm sharing.
small, like a little bit more, like tiny, no, like less than what you're smaller, please.
Could you just cut my piece into 12 equal symmetrical little pieces and put each one into a tiny little Tupperware?
Okay, so this is a video that is sort of taking on the facade of being educational, but what they're actually doing is making fun of people who are health conscious. Make it make sense. This is a bunch of bigger women getting together and making fun of women who may or may not be big. They could be big, they could be skinny, who knows the size of these women, but they're just trying to advocate for themselves in hopes of intaking less calories, less sugar, less needless cake, which we all do. You know, we've all been there as human beings. So instead of saying that's a totally okay choice to make, I'm gonna make a different one, they make fun of the person who's, let's be honest, doing the right thing for their body. Well, let's keep watching.
So that I can have a bite for each month of 2018. Thanks.
Smaller.
Let's take a step back and view what's happening through a critical feminist lens. CRFIs typically happen in environments where there are primarily or exclusively women. Women are disproportionately negatively affected by diet culture because diet culture maps onto sexism. Like many parts of diet culture, there is a significant performance component. You have to show others that you are being good.
What is happening right now? Is this what these individuals are doing when they're alone with a cake? I don't know. What is happening? What is the direction this is going in right now? Anyways.
Controlling how much you eat is part of what it means to be a, quote, good woman. This kind of behavior is a way for people to keep other people in check through food moralizing, surveillance, and policing. These are the mechanisms that are at the core of diet culture and weight control. The idea that you can position yourself as superior to others through self-control and self-denial is super sexist. CRFIs have a history of creating a hierarchy among women and ultimately in maintaining misogynist expectations.
Oh, goodness gracious, give me a break. I can't deal with this. Oh my gosh. If you're in San Francisco, you need to move, baby. I don't know who's going to be dealing with this on a daily basis with this woman coming into the office, but run. I'm telling you, run for the hills now. Interestingly enough, they're taking this moment of a woman coming into an office party. They have a cake. She says, can you please cut me, a half a piece of cake? And they're interpreting that as her trying to exclaim her superiority to all the women around her.
I only take a half a piece of cake, unlike you big backs.
And this is what leftists do. They make everything about themselves. They make everything an attack on their character, an attack on their choices, an attack on their lifestyle, an attack on their fatness, and it's gotta be driven by something. I think it's either an internal superiority that they're actually feeling about those around them, that they are now projecting onto the woman who's asking for a half slice of cake, or it's a deep-seated insecurity and knowledge that their fatness is in fact unhealthy, and they don't like it when they hear somebody say out loud that maybe they choose not to consume as many calories as them. They're accusing others of food moralizing and policing people's choices. Meanwhile, they're food moralizing and policing people's choices. And what did they call it? A CRFI, a cake-related fatphobic incident? Well, I have my own CRFI. This is a cult-related fact-phobic incident. But let's watch one more video from our girl Virgie. Oh, goodness.
Hi, my name is Virgie Tovar, and I'm the author of You Have the Right to Remain Fat, as well as a few other books on fat positivity and body acceptance. When I think about what people might be surprised by or what you wouldn't think of when you think of eating disorders, I immediately think of being a kid. I was a kid in a larger body, a teen in a larger body, and also I'm an adult in a larger body. And the message I always got from my doctor was shrink your body by any means necessary. And it really felt like there was a sense of a don't ask, don't tell. So because I truly believed, right, and this is where I think the surprise comes in. I really believed that this was about my health. I really believed that my doctor was right.
Okay. All right, let's find some middle ground here. I'm going to take her at her word and assume that a doctor did tell her that she should shrink herself by any means necessary. That is poor medical advice. Now, if a doctor had told her, hey, we need to shrink you a little bit, we need to lose a little bit of weight, but we need to find some healthy means to do so, that is totally acceptable advice. So yeah, maybe you had a run-in with a little kooky doctor, but the doctor wasn't that far off. In fact, the doctor was more right than you are now. And there's this sort of language all throughout her videos and much of her content that insinuates to me a lack of accountability and responsibility for her own actions and for the actions of other fat people. And you can sort of hear it in the way she describes herself. I was a kid in a larger body, a teen in a larger body, now I'm an adult in a larger body, as if she was somehow packaged that way as a human being. These things typically don't just befall us out of nowhere. And it's so interesting that woke ideology is often packaged with these words like accountability, empowerment, agency, choice. And then when it comes to this conversation about weight stigma or weight neutrality, there's no accountability, there's no empowerment, there's no choice. You are just stuck in the body that you're stuck in. Not only are you stuck in it, but we have to be positive about it, accepting of it, it and turn a blind eye to the actual medical and health implications of fat itself. It's one thing to say you should be treated with dignity and respect as a person of any color, shape, size. I think we can all agree with that for the most part. It's another thing to say because of my size, I'm going to now turn a blind eye to truth, facts, reality. I'm going to tell other people what to say, what to think, what to feel. I'm going to police their choices, and I'm not going to acknowledge my personal choice that has landed me in the position that I'm in. I'm sorry, Gretchen, but stop trying to make fat happen. The reality is, weight is not neutral. And the fact that San Francisco is spending taxpayer money on hiring this individual for a useless job where she tries to convince people to alter their reality and believe that it is a travesty. But that is the woke agenda in its very essence. We make up a problem based on this idea of marginalization and oppression. We inflate that problem. We blame the system for it. We start educating people in college on critical fat theory. They come out as experts off of journals that some other leftist wrote identifying this problem and blaming the system once again. And then they get hired by the very system itself to work a useless job as a weight stigma expert, and your taxpayer dollars fund it. And then when you raise your hand as a taxpayer and go, wait a minute, I don't think my money should be funding this useless job, they go, you must be fatphobic, which again is something they made up. And if they think you're fatphobic now, you're gonna be far more fatphobic by the time that Virgie Tovar is done with her job, because she's going to make society less healthy and more fat in the name of fat positivity. And then the endless cycle continues. Guys, those are my thoughts on the new weight acceptance czar in San Francisco. Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, if you disagree with anything I said in this video, duke it out in the comments down below, but do so respectfully. We encourage healthy debate on this channel. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah, you better.